I was thinking one day about the things that I loved as a child growing up and the things that I did, and I felt like that if I didn't record it, didn't put it down somewhere on paper, my children, my grandchildren, great-grandchildren would never know some of the things that took place back in the early 30s and 40s when I was a child, and it was the beginning and the ending of a war, and it was just something that I wanted to write for my children more than for anything else. So this is one of my favorite ones. It's me. For a while I lost myself. I didn't know who I was. I was not Cora or Cora McGee. As I write my poems and look back in time, I'm finding myself again. I'm Cora Mae Hughes, that little girl sitting high up in a tree. I'm eating wild fox grapes from a vine growing up the tree. As I look down, I see a mother sow giving birth to baby pigs. If I should fall in that pen, she would probably kill me. In the backyard, mother is hanging sheets to dry in the sun. My grandmother, Mammy, is walking out the door. She always wears a white apron to protect her dress. She's carrying a brown basket in her hand. Each day she goes to the chicken house to gather the eggs. That brown basket has carried many things. From my perch in the tree, I see Daddy plowing corn across the field. My granddaddy Pa is coming out of the woods carrying his shotgun. I bet we have squirrel for supper tonight. My sister is in her room reading a book. I wish she were here, eating wild fox grapes and making memories with me. Pa, there's someone in my heart who is very dear to me. He has been there from the start, with 3 children of his own and 13 grandchildren to carry on. I was the last grandchild to be born. He was my pa. He belonged to me. I never heard him raise his voice, nor lift a hand to spank a child or harm a man. He was my pa. He belonged to me. On his shoulder I would sit as he carried me through the woods and across the fields. To the movies and the country store we went, just my pa and me. A cousin came to visit, 2 little girls playing in the car. She said, "He is my pa." I said, "Oh no, he's my pa." 2 little girls fighting in the car. I could not understand how he could be her pa when I knew he belonged to me. So I bit her on the hand, 2 little girls crying in the car. When God calls me home and the pearly gates open wide, what will I see? A group of angels and my pa waiting for me. That was one of my first ones too. And it's actually, it happened, and the little girl was actually his great-grandchild, and she thought we didn't see her but occasionally, and we were sitting in the car, and they had gone in the house, and she was in the back seat and I was in the front seat, and my grandparents went inside the house, and I actually bit her on the hand because I knew that he was my pa and not her pa. And that's many years ago. This poem is Katie Mae and Me, and it's a true story. There's a little bit of exaggeration in it, but not enough to really talk about. It's a true story, and it was 80 years ago, a little longer than that now. And 80 years ago, Katie Mae lived just down the road from me. Her mother and daddy helped my daddy on the farm. She often came to work with them. We played in the dirt by the side of the road. We seldom saw a car way back then. In the damp dirt, we made frog houses with our feet, but frogs never moved in. We sat on the swing on the porch and told each other stories we made up as we thought of them. We ate plums from the trees by the side of the road until we got tummy aches. Baby kittens were our babies. We pushed them around in the dog carriage. Often they would jump out and run away. We chased them down and put them back again. In the middle of the day, Mother would call us to eat. We ate on the porch at a little table and chairs that my pa had made for me. We splashed and played in a tin wash tub filled with water warmed with the sun. Mother would tuck us in bed for a nap, where we laughed and giggled until we went to sleep. When we got out of bed, Mother would give us a biscuit with a hole punched in it, filled with molasses. We had a glass of milk to drink. Katie Mae and I would play until her daddy came to take her home. She was my very first friend. She had big brown eyes and dark hair. My eyes were blue, and I had brown freckles all over my face. Neither one of us cared what the other looked like. We were the best of friends and loved each other just as God intended us to do. This little girl came and played with us while her daddy and mother actually helped my daddy. This is a true story. Her name was not Katie Mae. This happened way before I started school, and I can't remember her name, but I had a friend named Katie Mae, and so I named this little girl Katie Mae because I cannot remember her name. And I'm proud of the story. I'm proud of what I did. And I loved Katie Mae, and she loved me, and she did more than this. Katie Mae actually pulled me out of the road and keep a car from running over me one day on that dirt road that was absolutely nobody ever on. But we had a good time. We played, and I really loved Katie Mae, and she loved me, and we had a blast. And this was way back before things like that took place. It was really between the First and Second War. You know, it was a long time ago. I said it was 83 now, but it's more than that now. But Katie Mae and I had a good time. Okay. Indian land. As a child, I played on land where Indian children once had played. In clear running water fed by springs, I caught tiny fish and tadpoles, just as Indian children must have done. I put mine in mason jars. They put theirs in clay pots made by hand. My face and hands were often stained from eating wild berries that grew on the land. I know that Indian children ate them too. There were places in the streams that had been dammed up by rocks placed by human hands. There Indian children bathed and played. I picked wild flowers and put them in my hair, just as Indian children did long before I was born. Go ahead. In plowed fields after rain, I found arrowheads that had been washed up on the ground. The fields had been the hunting grounds of the Tuscaroran Indians. You can still see the remnants of a fort built by the white man before he drove the Indians away. Babies. When I was little, I asked Mother, where do babies come from? She said, you'll have to ask your daddy that. When he came home from work, I climbed up in his lap. I asked him, where do babies come from? With a smile on his face and a twinkle in his eye, he held me close and said, I'll tell you where I found you. You were in the pig pen in a hollow stump. I looked in hollow stumps for years, but never found a baby inside of one. I guess the stork picked him up and carried him home where he belonged. This is one of my favorite ones, and it truly happened. I asked Mother that when I was little, and that was the answer she gave me, and this is the answer my daddy gave me. And I just love it. Kit the mule. Daddy went to a livestock sale. There he found Kit, an old white mule. She was too old to work. Nobody wanted her. Daddy brought her home and put her in the barn. There she had a stall all her own. She had a big green pasture in which to roam. There were trees with a cool breeze in the hot summertime. I would comb her tail and her mane and brush her with a curry comb. Kit would shine in the sun. I rode her bareback up the lane and around the fields. She would walk as fast as she could. When she headed home, she would pick up speed. Kit wanted her green pastures and the shade. Each evening, Daddy fed the livestock in the barn. One day, Daddy was not there. One day, Kit was not there, waiting to eat her oats and hay. Daddy found her dead on the ground under a big oak tree. He buried her there where she lay in the shade, with green grass growing all around. When I see a big white cloud floating by, I think of Kit, the old white mule, and what she meant to me. And I need to read that one again. There's some words in it not right. Basically, it's true all the way through. I'm telling you this just so Daddy never told me why he bought that mule home. He went to the market and bought two more horses rather. That was a horse and a mule. Her and a horse. And he never told me why he bought that mule, because she was skin and bones. And that was part of Daddy, I think, not saying he wasn't going to have another spoiled child. He would bring something like that home, and he knew that I spent time with him. I didn't spend time in the house like my sister did. And he had said he wasn't going to have another spoiled child. And he knew that I was going to latch on to that mule. I know he must have known it. And he sort of gave him to me without saying, "She's yours." But I considered her my mule. So a lot of things I considered mine that won't, and I think they were mine, but he never bothered to tell me they were mine. I'm tipped. This is barn art. We needed another tobacco barn. Daddy built it himself. It was covered in black tar paper to keep the heat. As the tobacco cured, it looked like a huge blackboard to me. I got a big piece of chalk and I went to work. I drew pictures of birds and trees and flowers. There was a house and stick people walking around as high as I could reach. I drew a water tower. I drew a dog and a cat and a few chickens too. I drew an airplane flying by. Last of all, I drew hearts and arrows sticking through. It looked like beautiful art to me. In big, bold letters, I signed my name. When Daddy came in from work that day, he looked me straight in the eye and said, "Fools' names like fools' faces, often seen in public places." He never said a word about my artwork to me. To this day, I'm very careful where I sign my name. And that's a true story. I actually did that. And Daddy never mentioned my art. He never said a word about it. Today I saw a chipmunk sitting on a stump. I looked at him. He looked at me. I think he thought, "What kind of creature is that I see just sitting there looking at me?" And I thought, well, that sounds pretty good. So I got a pencil and paper and I sat down and I wrote it. And from that I went to other things, writing. The night that I wrote this poem, I was just watching TV and sometimes you feel these, like something's going on somewhere, and suspicious sort of, and you look around to see what's happening. And I looked over my shoulder and there was a cat standing at the window. looking in at me and watching TV, and I just got up and got me a pencil and wrote it down, and this is what I wrote. Last night as I watched TV, a chill ran up my spine. I looked around. What did I see? Through an opening in the blinds, a black and white face with two little eyes staring at me. The neighbor's cat had come to call. He just sat there watching TV along with me. I thought that was pretty cute, but I didn't write that along. Well, it's a long time ago now, but it wasn't then. That was some of the end of my story writing right there. I have a poem that I wrote, one of the last ones that I wrote, about my grandson. His name was Ben. He died unexpectedly, and the whole family was devastated, but his dad was my son. It was just almost more than any of us could bear, but he really took it hard. And I prayed over this poem before I wrote it, and I just sat down and had absolutely nothing on my mind, and I prayed about it. I asked God to just put something in my mind and in my something that I could say to make my son Mark hope, make him feel better. And this is what I wrote, and I told God, I said, whatever you put in my mind, whatever word you put in my mind, I'm going to write it down. If it's just one word, I'm going to write it down if I hear the Spirit telling me to do it. And this is what I wrote. I sat there for a little while, just sit there kind of quiet, and I wrote, peace, my peace I give to you. Grace is yours, grace is yours. Come home, you are my child. Hope of heaven, know that I am God. Mary sitting at the feet of Jesus, she too lost a child. Trees, butterflies, and blue skies, Ben is there. Let your hearts be not troubled. Tears will dry, angels singing in the heavenly choir. God greets his children at the door. Ben is there, home at last, in the Father's loving care. And I just, this is a poem not about my childhood, but my adult life, and written for my grandson and for my own son, that just, there was no peace for him for such a long time. But in fact, he couldn't even read it. I read it to him one time, and I asked him what he did with it, and he said he put it with some other things that were Ben's, and he hadn't read it. But now he can. It's been about it was 2019 is when it was. I got the date up there. But God wrote this poem. I didn't write it. He really did. And most of it is in the Bible. I didn't add much myself. The Lord wrote it. And that. Forever. On a cold winter day when I was 10, I went to the tobacco barn to get out of the wind. I was looking around trying to find something to do. At the top of the barn, there was a little door that opened out. If I could get up there, I could look out and see forever across the farm. There was a long rope hanging at the side of the barn. I took it down and threw it as high as I could. It wrapped around a rafter at the top of the barn. Both ends came tumbling down. I tied one end of the rope around my feet, and with the other end I pulled as hard as I could. There I lay on the hard, cold ground, flat on my back. I pulled again and my feet went up. There I hung upside down in that old cold barn. Hand over hand I went up. Halfway up, I thought, what am I going to do? If I let go of this rope, I will hurt myself. And then it dawned on me, I will have to get down the same way I came up. Hand over hand was easy to do, you see, compared to hand under hand. it's almost impossible to do. I never told Mother or Daddy what I had done. I never saw forever across the farm. Maybe when the angels come to take me home, they will make a detour across the farm and point forever out to me.